Hi everyone, it's Raina. So I'm going to begin a series looking at the different children of the zodiac and how to understand them, understand their motivations, understand how they are affected emotionally by things, and maybe what their interests are, so that you can best nurture them. And obviously, this is directed towards any parents or guardians of these children, but also anyone who is connected to a child of this sign. So, whether it's an aunt, uncle, whatever. So, Aries is a cardinal fire sign, and Aries is the first sign of the zodiac and rules the first house, which is the house of the self. So, it goes without saying that Aries people in general are very self oriented. You can say that about all fire signs, Leos, Sagittarians. I'm a sun in Sagittarius. And I think we get a bad rap sometimes, and people think that we are self absorbed. But really, what's happening is that the fire element makes a person very, you could say, self contained, very independent. And so, even from a young age, these people have a sense of themselves that not everyone possesses from Jump Street, if you will. So the Aries child can be very, you could say, confident, sometimes depending on other factors. And if we're just talking strictly about astrology, if the sun is afflicted, for instance, the Aries person might be very, might be haughty, arrogant, pushy, and that sort of thing. But just looking at it from the most positive manifestation, the Aries child is going to be on the more confident side. But coupled with confidence is competition. There is a strong competitive streak in the sign of Aries. So, knowing this about Aries, and Aries is the first sign, so Aries people like to be number one. I was going to say, you thought Leos were that way, but Aries definitely take the cake. Now, when you're dealing with children, this can present an issue because some parents, and this might even be the majority of parents and other adults who are dealing with children, tend to compare one child to the next. So even like I was studying education. I went back to college when I was a mature adult, and I was studying education. And they even recommended that you say, I like the way that Billy is sitting in his chair. And to me, that is still a form of comparison and trying to manipulate through comparison. And I think adults do this because it's so effective, because it's so much a part of us, as children, to kind of sense injustice. Think about when you were a kid and one of your parents was slicing a cake. You might have just been like, oh my God, your brother or sister got a bigger piece than you. And it might have been just slightly bigger and it really bothered you. So you want to be sensitive to any kind of comparisons that you're making or favoritism, because the Aries child will really, that'll be one area they could get very triggered by. Now, we're not treating children a certain way so that they won't be triggered. It actually is a good practice not to do these things regardless. But one of the things that I'm trying to do with these videos is to show how the way that we interact with children can enhance their behavior, but not doing it through manipulation. There are other ways you can do these things where it doesn't involve manipulation. And, manipulating people is a negative way to get them to do what you want them to do. So, we don't want to manipulate, we want to encourage. Aries children, being of the fire element and being cardinal signs, are naturally can-do spirits, meaning that they don't have to be pushed or nudged into taking action. That's naturally what they are all about. The problem is that adults have created such a structure of do's and don'ts and rules that if a child takes the initiative, they're like punished or they're chastised. That was one of the reasons why I walked off when I was starting my student teaching, why I didn't continue with it, because a child, answered a question without being called on and got chastised. A 4-year-old child, very, very young child. Now, how is that supposed to help their love of school if, they love learning and they're so eager to tell the answer and they get chastised for it because they broke a rule? So these kinds of things, if we look at what the rules are, and I'm not saying you shouldn't have rules in your household, but if you look at them, see if they can be flexible. See if they are too rigid. Because Aries is a natural sign of assertion. And when an Aries person is thwarted, they can be very rebellious. So it's not that you're afraid of defying your Aries child and laying down the law, which is really, to me, laying down the law is really about creating a structure for a child's life, but a flexible structure. And the example that I have heard mentioned about giving children choices, I think is so important. From a very early age, the Aries child may want to wear certain clothing, and some of it you may not feel is appropriate. So by giving them a choice between two acceptable things that you wouldn't mind them wearing, you give them this, it's not an illusion of freedom. It actually is a form of freedom, but you're giving it a little at a time. And obviously it's not appropriate. It's not developmentally appropriate to give a very small child just complete freedom. That doesn't keep them safe. But to give them some modicum of the ability to make a choice, I think can be very helpful. And also, another thing that is a hallmark of Aries is a fiery nature. And more than the other two fire signs, although they can certainly express that as well. And I think the reason this is true for Aries is because it's ruled by Mars. And Mars is very, you could say Mars is impulsive or brash or things like that. I would say that Mars can be very aggressive. So there might be a tinge of aggression within an Aries child from a very young age, where when they get mad, they might, throw a hissy fit or maybe hit another child. But I don't think that that's a given. I think that the parents model appropriate behavior by how they deal with their anger. And, people still think that hitting children is a great form of discipline. I'm not saying everybody does, but a disappointing number still believe that. And I'm just here to tell you that that is not modeling control of one's feelings. Violence has no place in child discipline as far as I'm concerned. Now, the thing with Aries is that there's already that propensity to kind of be very reactive because of the immediacy of Mars. So this is another good reason to model to an Aries child the idea of restraint, emotional restraint, the idea of, becoming collected, calm and collected, cool, calm and collected, rather than, I believe a lot of times when adults, spank or slap their children, they're doing so out of their own emotional immaturity and lack of self-control, not it's not like really well thought out. But in any case, um, responding to an Aries child with violence is just going to add fuel to the fire. And I don't even like talking about violence in children because I think to me, it's just so horrible that even occurs. But the thing that Aries children need to learn is how to become more patient, more in control of themselves, and things like that. And I think that children can find enhancement with this if the environment is set up to support that. So, an example would be, do you allow a child like this to watch violent shows or to play violent video games? That just kind of stokes that negative emotion within them. So maybe classical music. I know some people think, oh gosh, no, not classical music, but anything that's calming types of music. Some kind, make sure that your relationship, if you are with um, another adult in that household, that there is a peaceful atmosphere, that you're not in a constant battle with somebody else, because children are natural mimics. They're going to pick up these things. And an Aries child will typically identify with an aggressor because that they're ruled by the god of war, Mars. So why wouldn't they kind of identify with that? So all of there are things that we can do to enhance the kind of outcome that we're looking for. And yeah, I mean, just in general, um, television, the internet, and from a young age, sometimes parents want to distract their children by giving them their phone and letting them watch things. I think it is really crucial for Aries children to get a lot of physical uh, exercise, because the I think there's a tendency with Aries children to be ADHD, meaning hyperactive. And the AD, the attention deficit part of it, I don't know, but definitely hyperactive in the sense of having oodles of energy and know where to really let it out because of, the way the schools are created. There's not the same, when I went to school, I think we had like an hour for lunch, and I think we had recess twice a day. I can't remember, so long ago, but we had so much more. We had gym maybe every day or every other day, just so much going on, and these children don't have that. So um if a child has a lot of energy, why can't they play a lot and get it out of their system and really just take advantage of having all of that? Energy is a great thing. It's not a bad thing, but there has to be a proper channel for it. And maybe that's one of the things that the parent can do, because cardinal signs, they love to start projects and they love to always be active. So if you are a parent and you really want to honor that with a child, try providing them that kind of thing. I do believe, I don't know the statistics, but I do believe that homeschooling is becoming more and more popular and respected. Because of the shutdown, there were as much as 2 years in some cases, but at least a year where children were basically kept at home or, only, hybrid schooling and things like that. So that was when some parents explored other alternatives. Some people have been homeschooling for years. So realize that there are other alternatives. Um, well, in most countries, I heard that in Sweden it's illegal to homeschool, which is like crazy to me. There's certain countries where they outlaw it, but it's another alternative instead of fitting a child into an environment that may act against its best interest. At least to consider alternatives. But giving your child a lot of exercise, even if you don't need that much exercise, you can still do that. And actually, as a family, that can be a really great way of bonding with your children to take a bike ride after dinner or a walk around the block to, go exploring in the forest preserves or whatever and having that active lifestyle. And I know that some people think that it's a good idea to enroll children in sports from a young age. That's like a big thing where I live. And I mean, I have mixed feelings about it because I think that competition can be toxic in many cases. And I think it kind of conditions children to grow up to be like competitive in a toxic way. So I'm not like crazy about competition, but I will say that Aries is a sign that is naturally inclined towards that. So it would not be beyond the pale for an Aries child to just be very enthusiastic about doing something along those lines. So let me think if there's anything else I would say. But definitely, well, what I was going to say along with sports is, remember that these children and children in general are creative. And this is one of the reasons why I have objected to children being enrolled in sports so at such a young age, so often. Because the parents don't seem to value the arts, like, being a musician or any other kind of activity that doesn't involve winners and losers, like, being a dancer or something along those lines. So, give your child ample opportunity to explore their creativity because fire signs tend to be very creative. And make sure and watch your own words, watch your own consciousness. Are you a generally positive person or do you tend to be pessimistic? Because Aries children are super positive. They, like I said, they have a can-do spirit and they need a parent who can be supportive in their quest for, you know, accomplishing things in life. Aries is a very ambitious sign, and we are all different in how we feel about different things when it comes to ambition. Some people are more ambitious than others, for sure, and that's okay. We shouldn't feel ashamed if we're not type A personality. But if your child is different from you and you try to force them to be like you, that's not, I feel like that's not honoring who they are. So be mindful, that Aries children will very likely tend to be ambitious from a young age. They may be competitive, and you can help them if they're coming home from school in first grade and they're talking about some other kid and how they beat them in the spelling bee, if they even still have spelling bees, or whatever, and you're like lecturing them that they shouldn't compare themselves to others and be ambitious, that may be absolutely 100% true, but you're not really speaking to them. That's why I'm doing this series, because I want people to put themselves in that other person's shoes. Even that person, children are people too. And we have to honor the fact that they have their own feelings about things. And an Aries child may feel like, hey, I want to do this and I can't do that. And it's all because of, this other child is getting all the credit and this kind of thing. And instead of chastising them, what you can say is, when you are doing what you're talented in, there may be other people who have that talent, but they cannot do exactly what you do because you are an individual, and you stress their individuality, and you let them know that even if they come in second to something or third, that doesn't mean that they don't have talent, and it doesn't mean that they can't prevail eventually, but that it doesn't matter, that everyone has their own talents in life. And it's really about, kind of reassuring them more than anything. Because sometimes either a parent feeds into that in a negative way, or they try to deny their child their feelings. And like I said, I'm of that variety too, where I don't believe in competition. But if I had an Aries child, I would want to encourage them to the extent of how they're wired. I don't want to try to deny their basic nature and kind of like make them feel that they're wrong for being the way that they are, because there's some real pluses to it. These are people, when somebody's ambitious, they're very likely to succeed. And I know that the success is a relative thing, but this is, we all have our passions in life. And this is, fulfilling ambitions could be theirs. So we want to facilitate that for them. So yeah, I think that's all I really want to say about that. I am going to also be doing videos on parents. And when I do for instance, if I talk about Aries parent, I'll be talking about the way that they look at their child and maybe give examples of certain children that they may have issues with because of being so different, and how they have to be careful about that. Because, if you treat all of your children the same, you're not really tuning into their individual needs. And you may just be doing it thinking you're being fair, but you really can't be treating everyone identically because everybody's different. All right, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, I am launching a reading looking at a child's natal chart. And I don't do readings for individuals under 18 who are requesting it. So I don't do videos for younger teenagers. But I have done a reading looking at the chart of a child or children and seeing what could be areas that they are vulnerable in, what kind of challenges that they have that the adult can work with. This isn't about exploiting their vulnerabilities. It's very important that people take information and apply it in a positive way. It's about being able to learn how to understand the child better, because sometimes, we do tend to have clashes with others, even as adults, because we don't see that the child, no, that each other as adults have different ways of approaching life, and we misunderstand another person. We think that they're doing something against us when they're really not. So yeah, so it's looking at that. It's looking at talents that the child may have, and these will show up as interests a lot of times, but you never know if a child will come across that on their own, and you can help to play that up, because that is ultimately, I think, in terms of a parent, what a parent can do really well is encourage their children in that regard. So, I will provide a link below for that new reading, and I hope that you enjoyed this. All the best. Take care.